So, welcome everyone to the second keynote of the day. And let me tell you, we are extremely elated to have Dr. Karan Jani with us today. An international sought after scientist is having his roots in Vadodara. Let me take this opportunity to introduce him. Dr. Jani is an astrophysicist and a scientist with the Nobel Prize winning Gravitational Wave Experiment, LIGO. His primary research focuses on astrophysical black holes and testing Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity. Dr. Jani earned his PhD in black hole physics from the Georgia Institute of Technology. He received 2 Bachelors of Science degrees in physics and astrophysics, with a minor in mathematics from the Pennsylvania State University. Over the last decade, Dr. Jani has held research appointments at leading centers in gravitational wave astronomy and has authored and co-authored 100 plus scientific publications in this field. Beyond astrophysics, Dr. Jani's interest spans in education and science policy. As a fellow at the Sam Nunn School of International Affairs, he published independent research on the interface of SciTech with international relations. During graduate school, Dr. Jani served for 2 terms as the VP of Student Body of Georgia Tech and was appointed by the Office of the Provost on institute-wide committees. Dr. Jani is on the Forbes list of 30 influential scientists under 30 and was voted as the Tech Personality of the Year by CNN News 18. He is a recipient of the prestigious Sam Nunn Fellowship funded by the MacArthur Foundation, Special Breakthrough Prize in Fundamental Physics and American Physical Society Distinguished Student Award. Dr. Jani has given several public lectures, including at the official TED event, Forbes Summit, and International Conclave of Higher Education. The Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi, invited Dr. Jani to discuss the greater role of expanding his research in India. Friends, let me tell you, this is just a tip of an iceberg kind of introduction, because it took me full 18 scroll down attempts to go through his entire CV. It's just commendable what he has achieved at such a young age. Dr. Jani, we welcome you to the Maker Fest and we look forward to listening the words of wisdom. Stage is yours.
Well, thank you so much, Aman, for this very kind introduction. I hope everyone can hear my voice well. So thank you, everyone at MakerFest, particularly Mr. H.T. Patel for inviting me. It's always very exciting. I'll switch between languages. હું ગુજરાતીમાં પણ થોડું વાત કરીશ just so audience ne reach થાય. It's very commendable that during our COVID times this effort is being done to conduct this kind of innovation sort of webinar and like getting students and બધા involved. So I'm very excited this whole process you all are involved. And especially as a scientist, I think there has never been a better time for us to think again what research and innovation really gives to society. It's not just words say that we throw around for getting PhD or for getting seed funding. There is a much more very central idea to this. So the things that I'm going to talk about just very briefly today are just some of my collected thoughts on research and innovation in this post-COVID era. Let me just check if I've done my screen share right, as I was told earlier. I assume it. Okay, yeah, it is done that way. All right. Oops, no, this is not my whole screen. Okay. I think Zoom badano favorite software છે અત્યારના. એટલે જ એના શેરના સ્ટોક પ્રાઇસીસ પણ ઝૂમના ઘણા વધી ગયા, right? And it's very interesting. Zoom is a great example. If you think about Skype, આપણે વર્ષોથી વાપરીએ છીએ. Every tool આપણે વાપરતા હતા, but still Skype didn't pick up. It only Zoom was able to, a new player was able to break a technology that was already demonstrated by Skype for all these years. And that also shows a reflection, like a company like Microsoft, which is a big structure, કે ત્યાં કેટલું resistance હશે just to make minor changes, while Zoom as a newcomer was able to take the whole market from them. So research and innovation, what it will mean in the post-COVID era. Just for those, I'm professor in Vanderbilt University. That's the university no maru tag. I'm based Nashville, Tennessee. And it's right now about just 7 o'clock. So early morning coffee. Yeah. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So for me, this has been a very rather productive time since lockdown happened, and it's a bit ironical. Kanke, I haven't been to university now exactly for a year. I have not been in my office for 1 year. I have not met any of my students in person. I have not met any researcher, any physicist I have not met in 1 year. And still, this has been a rather productive time for me. It's partially because I'm a theoretical physicist, so I do a lot of things which are directly computer data analysis, or really just looking to Einstein's general theory of relativity and trying to gather insights about a specific object that I look for, which are black holes. You can think of black holes as just આપણું સ્ટાર હોય, અને the way the star અત્યારે આપણું sun છે, sun is it's in middle age, just post teenage age ma, and then every star dies. The star follows the same cycle as humans follow. Some stars die as black holes, and that makes them a very intriguing object, just to see કે universe કેવી રીતે evolve થયું છેલ્લા 1400 કરોડ વર્ષથી, about 14 billion years. So last March, I published a study on there is a new technique કે આપણે black hole બ્રહ્માંડમાં શોધી શકીએ. That if those who are in the field would, or just in general in sciences, would appreciate. Okay, so this paper was published in Nature, which is the one of the most leading scientific journals. It's almost like a benchmark of where we as a researcher hope to publish. And this study was on the cover of Nature. So this is the cover image ke last March ma. It was just right around the lockdown when this study was published. What you actually see is gravitational waves. This is the supercomputer simulation. It takes Varna, some of the fastest supercomputers, just to have this very snapshot. The picture left image, the one that you can see. And this was a work that I had started doing since I was a PhD student. Over the years that we built on it. So that was very exciting. It's a personal honor to be on the cover of Nature magazine. It's in field of arts, how it is in being on the cover of Vogue magazine, any of that kind of. It's the same for science to be on Nature magazine. But in the summer, as I work very closely with the former director of Harvard's astronomy, Abraham Loeb. He is for the last administration, he was the scientific advisor to the President of the United States. The President of the United States has an office as a formal advisors. He was one of them, and with him we started thinking about NASA going back to moon. And this is a kind of very interesting era, because after 1970s we have not went back to the moon as humans. We went there initially, 69 થી લઈને 70s સુધી. But soon it was realized, okay, I mean, for many reasons, it was very expensive, and there was not much of, there was a very high risk project. So NASA eventually abandoned going to the moon. Originally, they went to the moon just as a sort of, power against, Russia trying to do the same. But now we are in an era, China is exactly where, Russia was in terms of, competition to superpowers. And China got EMNU landing on the far side of the moon, which is much challenging. It was just about what ISRO was trying to do with Chandrayaan. So NASA had a call and proposal कि हमें लोग को moon पर जाइए and we are going to build a permanent base there. So their mission is कि 2024 સુધીમાં they would send 2 astronauts and they would go to the site, and over the course of multiple missions they will build a human base at one spot in the moon. So myself and Professor Abraham Loeb, we published a study which said, if we are going to moon, we can build LIGO, jerite India ma banaya hai, this very experiment we can build on the moon, and it's very much more powerful on the moon because moon is by default very quiet. ત્યાં કોઈ ocean નથી, so you don't have any seismic noise coming from the ocean waves. The moon doesn't have earthquakes. Moon માં કોઈ human of course ના પડે, એ નથી, environmental effect નથી, વરસાદ ના પડે, all those things, storms નથી આવતા, and it's a default vacuum. So it's a very nice laboratory for many experiments. If you start thinking about what all we can do on moon. So we proposed an experiment and we send it to NASA as a sort of next 20 years from what is the big thing in physics you can do. So that was a publication. This is was one of the news articles we made this publication. This is just one quote. I'm just going to read it. It says, two prominent scientists, Dr. Karan, Jani and Professor Abraham Loeb, recently published a paper where they argue that NASA's Project Artemis would be ideal for exploring gravitational waves on the far side of the moon. So this was my last summer, so this was a fun thing I was thinking about. But back in September, there was a breakthrough announcement that I had done. I mean, the discovery I was part of, and I was working on it in the background of Badua Chaltu tu tyare. But it took us while thodik vadare, because especially because of the pandemic. So we discovered a new kind of black hole. Black hole that was long thought कि universe ma would not exist. And there were good reasons to think कि stars अगर black hole बनता है, there is a limit કે star ब्रह्मांड માં કેટલા મોટા હોય, અને એનાથી મોટા બ્રહ્માંડમાં આપણે તારાઓ જોતા નથી, એટલે એટલા મોટા black holes પણ ન હોવા જોઈએ. And it was a very well structured argument હતી એની. મારી PhD thesis માં I had started thinking, what if universe has a surprise આપણી માટે, કે there are black holes જે બ્રહ્માંડનો જન્મ થયો ત્યારે અગર પ્રોડ્યુસ થયા હોય, and if they are, then one day we would be able to find. So I was working on it for last close to 6-7 years, and last year March May 21, 2019, like 3 days after my birthday, there was a signal that came in LIGO, and it completely shocked. It came exactly thinking कि आवा कोई ब्रह्मांड में ब्लैक होल थी आयो है, and over the course of since May 2019 to September 2020 સુધી we kept analyzing, looking at the signal, and my team included. And then we concluded this is exactly the kind of black hole that I was long expecting. And it came also from very far. It came જ્યારે આપણે બ્રહ્માંડની ઉંમર અત્યારના કરતા પણ less than half હતી. So the age of the universe is right now about 1400 crore years. Am I saying it in the right units? Yes, 14 billion years. So the signal came when the universe was just about 5 billion years old. This is remarkable, right? 5 billion, I mean, this is like you're crossing half the universe to find an object जे थोड़ा किलोमीटर ની size નું હોય, and you still have the scientific expertise on Earth as a species. So when this signal was released, Earth did not exist. It is that far back in the universe. After the signal was released, the sun was born, the Earth was born, the whole species on this planet evolved. Eventually we became intelligent, and just being alive in that era when the signal brahmand thi aata hoy, but to be alive in an era where you are the first human beings to actually see this signal, the first walking species to see the signal, and that's a very humbling process. That makes to me science what it is. All the things that I love about science is essentially this. So ઘણા એ પ્રેસમાં વાંચ્યું હશે. It was on Times of India front page after the. So I did the announcement about this discovery. It was from Italy. I represented MARI team, which is the LIGO scientific collaboration, and we had world media ત્યારે. The original plan was that we would have been in Washington DC and announced the result from National Science Foundation, the press conference. The COVID, એટલે અમે આવી રીતે ઝૂમ કોલમાં જ અનાઉન્સમેન્ટ કરી હતી. So it wasn't એટલું exciting. So it was this story, Indian origin astrophysicist discovers mysterious intermediate mass black hole. It was intermediate because it was too big to come from star, but it wasn't too small. It was too small compared to બીજા અમુક black hole જે બ્રહ્માંડ આપણી ગેલેક્સીના સેન્ટરમાં હોય છે. It was also on the front page of New York Times. And this very image, the New York Times homepage, that very day, which was my simulation, and I was credited for that. There was other articles, Forbes, bija. I'm not gonna show off, but just for people to gather, especially those students who maybe are there listening, that I'm very much a product of Gujarat State Board. I went through Gujarat State Board 10th ni exam, 12th ni exam. I just kept doing physics. I was not a great physics student. In fact, મારા બોર્ડમાં સૌથી ઓછા જ ફિઝિક્સમાં આવ્યા હતા. But this is just, when you continue what is very sort of personal, once you sort of click, okay, this is where you want to sort of keep going ahead. It's a lot of fun. Eventually, it just becomes your hobby. So the thing which made me a bit more humble. So જે દિવસે મેં discovery કરી, that day I had an interview with BBC, and it was on BBC World Radio, which has this worldwide audience of some 90 million viewers. And BBC on that interview started with Stephen Hawking sort of voice that interview. So I'm just going to play a very small clip of that interview with BBC.
They're quite literally holes in space that stuff can fall into, but not get out of. They are places where the gravitational field is so strong that nothing, not even light, can get away.
The unmistakable voice of Stephen Hawking speaking as part of a BBC documentary in 2018. Karan Jani is one of the lead authors of the scientific paper published today, which gave us details of this discovery. He's an astrophysicist at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee.
We detected a collision of two black holes in the universe when the universe was just about half its current age, so from really, really far away. It created a black hole, which is the most massive and the most unknown type of black hole we had ever seen. It completely puzzles us.
Why does it completely puzzle you?
There is no natural way we know how the universe would make these black holes. We know that stars cannot make them because stars cannot be this big. So it remains there is some exotic way the universe has figured out to make black holes that we till date were not aware of.
But could it not be, and I hesitate to posit a theory to an astrophysicist, but could it not be that if you've seen this collision between these two black holes making a sort of bigger black hole, that it's part of almost a chain reaction, that is what has happened up to this point?
It could very well be, but the problem is that every time for the next chain reaction, the probability is like a golf ball from China would hit a golf ball in Argentina. So it's getting much and much unlikely at that point.
And am I right in saying that although what you've detected is by far the largest black hole that has been detected, or the largest merger that has been detected, that there are much, much bigger black holes knocking around the universe?
Yes, that is correct. What we have seen is black hole is essentially a mid-sized black hole. So it's not too big, it's not too small. And those mid-size are...
Okay, so that was just a small snippet of the BBC interview. See my web page per check. But it's personally I mean, I've said it earlier too. So the reason I started doing physics is because I read Stephen Hawking this famous book called the Brief History of Time. I was ત્યારે આપણા MS યુનિવર્સિટીમાં I was a student, BSc physics માં. Those who have known MS યુનિવર્સિટીની બહાર પેલી રસ્તા પર સ્ટ્રીટ બુક્સ વેચતા હોય, and where you can just walk and there were the books used for you. And that's the first time when I saw Stephen Hawking book. અને ઘણા બધા lectures bunk કરીને મેં book વાંચી. And I was very mesmerizing. It was something as if, if you say, Amla recently was a World Book Day. So, if a book can change the way you live life, I think that to me was definitely one of that kind of a book. So decades later, I mean, the few years later, I worked with him at his institute, but over the course, I won the same prize that he was a previous recipient of. And now, of course, making this discovery happen. So happy. So let me just move through the gates, and come back to COVID and the other ideas that thoughts I had. So, innovation is this very interesting coincidence કે જ્યારે આપણે બહુ જ ક્રાઇસિસમાં હોય, over the course then humanity usually leads to some innovation. And it could be just our general trend, it's just how our brains operate, because evolutionary our innovation was always a species, કે આ animal ને આપણે કેવી રીતે hunt કરશું, કે how are we going to defend ourselves in a weather when we were in a very primitive stage. It's very rooted in us કે crisis આવે then only we think about an innovative way to move forward. So Newton's gravity, when Newton came up with it, famously there was a plague in London. And Newton was asked that Cambridge Manavi, so he had to stay home. It was a big plague. It lasted for a long time, which is how COVID. During the process, Newton came up with his theory of gravity, which completely transformed in many ways engineering, right? I mean, we had now a set of equations to play around with and know how things move in a system. Einstein's theory, the special theory of relativity, came around the time when World War I was there. And if you think about the connection, Einstein came up with E equals to mc squared during World War I, and that's how the World War II ended. So it was the theory that he had come up during a time of crisis. In fact, like Germany, there was a military weatherman. He read about Einstein's theory a few months after Einstein's published, and while he was at the front, German army in the front, he wrote few equations and he sent that letter to Einstein. That his solution, it was Schwarzschild, that guy's name, that is the first solution of black holes. And that was happened in by a veteran during a combat. So it's amazing how things sort of evolve. Then World War II, we had nuclear reactors. We had a proper understanding of how to extract unlimited energy, right? Essentially from atoms. For the longest time, we thought that atoms cannot be smashed into two. We had this preliminary idea, but now then people realized, especially Einstein and others, Richard Feynman, Einstein, Oppenheimer, you can have this extraction of energy. Then during the Cold War with Russia, suddenly it was like, we can have a satellite in space, we can send humans in space. The humans reached on moon, and that happened during the peak of Cold War. For context, our local subcontinent, જ્યારે Kargil tension peak પર થવાનું હતું, ત્યારે Pokhran 2 we had a test. Dr. Kalam, there were others who were involved with it. Now, more recently, 2008 economic recession, when I was there in United States, it was very visible, what was happening. And then few months later, trickling down to the global economy. That's during the time when I was a student, the PhD students in computer science had already started working on machine learning and artificial intelligence, right? That was like a PhD thesis for many people back then. The 3G technology, a 3G mobile service was just coming. So you see all of that, back when that happened is the reason why Pachiti machine learning na revolution tha, the very reason why we have this optimize video transmission અત્યારના. It's because a lot of tools that were developed during that era. So one needs to ask, what happens now that we would go past COVID? That this is the biggest crisis that likely humanity has faced in the last 100 years. I mean, post the wars, at least, and post World War II, this is one of the global event where pretty much every nation on this planet has been affected. So you see, there's one gets a trend from usually market. I don't understand finances, but that's just one of the reading hobbies I got to do during this pandemic. So there are two stocks I have. On the left ma there is this company called Moderna, and right ma there is Tesla. So Moderna was working for a very, very long time. It's a company based in Boston, and they were trying to develop what you call an mRNA type of therapeutic. So it is very different than આપણે ગોળી લીધી અને સાજા થઈ ગયા versus આપણે the traditional vaccine લઈએ અને antibodies create થાય. This works on a much deeper level. And Moderna had been funding universities for a while to have PhD students, and they got a chain of command ready. This red dot is the time, so this is Moderna stock, and a red dot is the time when COVID-19 hit. And you can see the stock literally went exponential. For years it didn't. It remained stable, and then suddenly went uphill. And for the very valid reason, Moderna was the first company to have a COVID vaccine. It was the very first vaccine that was approved and came in the world. There was another one was with Pfizer, but very much based on the same kind of technology. The right mother is Tesla stock over the course of 5 years, and you can see Tesla pretty much stable. COVID hits and Tesla goes exponentially high. So what does it really tell us is that risky in that sense, Pella Avtarma, when we are in the traditional economies, ambitious long-term R&D is beating status quo. And it is beating, so it's not COVID thing, we have become a little more economically conservative. We would only invest in things which are, like as a consumer also, right? We are still open to buying. So it's suddenly like Tesla, a car you can buy online. They don't have showrooms. So they deliver the car to you just like Amazon delivers a parcel to you. And that kind of, and the ambitious way of thinking, a lot of things that go, it's an electric car, it can auto run. I can tell the car, that I'm standing here, the car would come there. That kind of things, which there was big lobbying against, making electric cars happen, but it worked. And now Elon Musk is the richest man on the planet Earth. It's amazing, to think about kya બધા innovations થઈ રહ્યા છે. So if you ask me, Atyarna, what I'm excited, and this is not my discipline, any of this is just me being in a university environment and knowing ke બધા શું work કરે છે. So one is 5G technologies. 5G is coming up, right? 4G હતો જે 5G હતો. 5G internet speed is almost broadband internet speed કરતા વધારે. That you have on your cell phones. So that always when your internet speed goes up, there is a level of innovation that happens, and this is something startups can do. So Atyarna, the biggest thing that we expect from the COVID is people are more used to this kind of a remote work environment, and you can make a remote work environment more immersive when you have virtual reality or you have AR, right? So that is where clearly a lot of investment and interest is going. There's a lot of gaming interest. If you think about, we are running out of OTT content. અત્યારે તમે હજી 2 વર્ષ તમારા favorite shows જોશો, but that is not what we would keep doing. If you think about, Facebook was a thing 2008 and then so it came, Orkut હતું, Facebook હતું, Twitter આવ્યો, Instagram આવ્યો, and then it sort of calmed down, and પછી people were like, Netflix or Amazon Prime આવ્યો. You think that, but what you need is essentially what captures your brain to feel a certain involvement which you don't get from your real life, right? You need some sort of that sort of brain level excitements to happen. Now gaming is one such, mobile gaming is one such, but more so gaming in terms of when you show a film, you could tell કે તમને કયું ending બતાવું છે, so users can select, and that's how the story would evolve. So that is happening. It's very clear there is going to be a complete overhaul of healthcare and the pharmaceutical sector. right? I mean, we are with Moderna, with BioNTech. There is a lot of such innovation that happen, but if you think about this essential technological breakthrough that is going to happen, it's called CRISPR. CRISPR is a gene editing tool. CRISPR was the founders of CRISPR were given the 2020 Nobel Prize in medicine. So it's a very big breakthrough. Sorry, it was in chemistry or it was, I think, in chemistry. Sorry, not in medicine. So this is essentially where the next big revolution is happening, and I'm almost talking in the scale of internet revolution, where CRISPR technologies would take over pretty much the way day to day we can alter our gene sequence and remove certain diseases that were inheritatory to us. So pharma sector is definitely going to change quite dramatically. And finally, something that I'm slightly more excited and involved is space and a fundamental research. One is we would be going back to moon. There is no question about that. Our decade, we will be back on the moon as humans. The question is what we will do now that we have a better way of going to moon. So one is a lot of our communication systems can be put on the moon. Because the moon follows geocentric orbit. So moon is always at the same location from us, facing the earth, and you can see the same side of the earth all the time from the moon. There is a default data storages. I'm actually advising a few startups on moon per data storage. The moon has natural lava caves. Oceans ni andar bada data storages hoy છે. So you can eventually keep it on moon as well. And there is privatization in space. Now, but that is not something which I see small companies or startups to really do. You need very big players to invest in this. So Athena SpaceX is invested by Tesla, one of the richest companies. Blue Origins, which is invested by Amazon. So until that level happens, privatization in space, especially in context of India, is going to be challenging. The final is the quantum computing revolution. I don't know how decade ma apne reach thaisu ke nahi, but I can tell you half of the PhDs in physics and computer science right now are in quantum computing. And that is just a key. જેતે મેં કીધું હતું કે જેતે machine learning ને artificial intelligence પર આજથી 10 વર્ષ 15 વર્ષ પહેલા લોકો PhD કરતા હતા, quantum computing માં આજે કરે છે. It is definitely a revolution coming. And just to give you a sense of, so quantum computing માં તમારા phone ની અંદર એટલી memory હશે કે it would almost break the most recent supercomputer that you have. Right? It is that level of leap is going to happen. So very final concluding thoughts. I hate how a conclusion after, but then I feel I have to leave students with something. So one thing I've known is that system always prefers equilibriums. If you leave two gas and around, the system reaches an equilibrium position, and it really hates leaving the equilibrium. So no matter what field you are always going to face resistance if you're an outlier. And that is, it's true even if you are playing, you can always find excuse, cricket ma bo competition, for example, and that's why being a cricketer is hard. Or you are in a discipline ke jahan government no bo involvement che, ke hierarchy che, all that thing is true for every field. Nepotism thi laine badhu, it stays in fundamental physics thi laine film sudhi. So you must have that sort of patience and resilience, right? Because it's a long game you have to play. You cannot get one of the things like the scientist who won the Nobel Prize collected on behalf of LIGO said you cannot rely on validation, because after a point, if that becomes tamari drug કે તમને જ્યાં સુધી society થી validation ના મળે ત્યાં સુધી you're not going to work on something, then you cannot go far. You have to get over that. The second is one has to build technical expertise and innovate in it. I see a lot of students, who have this, and a lot of young entrepreneurs too. You have a great organizational skill, you have people management skill, you have communication skills. All that is fine. All that can be learned. But technical expertise is something very much your core. And that makes you really marketable. When you have a certain, whether you write a code, whether you have a tech, startup, it has to be niche. It has to be technically right, and something which you can build on. આપણી સિટીમાં, આપણા સ્ટેટમાં ઘણા એક્ઝામ્પલ્સ છે કે there are pharma companies which started with drug which was very innovative. You can't, if you don't build on those drugs, if you don't continue keeping that as a sort of your candle, then other companies would learn your technical expertise and overcome you. So that kind of technical expertise, whether you're a scientist, whether you're an entrepreneur, I think I found it to be regardless true. One thing that now that I'm in my 30s, I appreciate even more is that you cannot underestimate your health, physical health and mental health. It's very suddenly this transition when you would feel that this very thing that you have to fight against the system, you have to have always this technical resistance, but your body just gives up. When you have arguments over emails, over Zoom calls, personal meetings more, and when you come back, your brain is very upset, right? And to reach you need it to be in a healthy state all the time. And I think I like many others have very underestimated mental health and personal health. So I think that is absolutely key to no matter where you want to go ahead with your life. So just, like one thing, I love this picture. This is an actual image from NASA's Cassini, European Space Agency's Cassini mission. This is Saturn. આ બ્લેક કલરમાં જે દેખાય છે પેલી સેટર્નની આ બધી રિંગ્સ છે જે સેટર્નની આજુબાજુ છે, અને ત્યાંથી એ લોકોએ અર્થનો ફોટો લીધો છે. So see અર્થ આ નાનું white dot. Within this lies everything. આપણે બધી કોવિડની deaths, આપણા જેટલા પ્રોબ્લેમ્સ છે, આપણા જેટલા વોર્સ છે, આપણા જેટલા પોલિટિકલ એમ્બિશન્સ છે, પર્સનલ વેલ્થ છે, everything lies within this dot. And I like this because it takes me to the big picture. It keeps you asking, what is, sure, day to day you don't think about big picture, but you have to think, why did you start whatever it is, and have to go back to it time and again. And that is a sort of driving motivation, Mari. For me, it was always to understand why I exist in this universe. And I chose the biggest of the big questions. And I'm not going to, of course, answer any of them in my lifetime, but at least I'm slightly ahead where I was before I started. So on that note, well, thank you everyone for paying attention. And if you have any more interest questions, of course, reach out to me. My website par bahut બધા videos પણ છે. So yeah, thank you. Let's stop the screen share.
I don't know if there are questions or not, but we are simply stunned in a way. And a scientist talking, scientists have a very specific field with so much of details. At this age, nature covers you on the cover page. And the way you describe the entire journey, I don't know. Let's see, talked about the MS University, buying books. So one of the things which I captured is that reading. And this is one of the worries. ULA as an institution working for youth development, we insist a lot, not insist, but we try and tell the people that reading book is something very important. And you said that that has transformed probably. There are many unanswered questions. In a way, how can you be achieving so much, and we want to learn from that angle, or let the youth learn out of it. So at this age, achieving this, and the natural question comes is, okay, what next? If at 32 this is what it is, what next? So I do not know. You also talked about the kind of things that are going to come, and very briefly touched, and many of the youth, for that matter, to some extent, they may be enjoying, but how much they understand out of it, I really do not know. The excitement is one thing, understanding and really making some career out of it, for that matter. So, I have many questions in that sense. And the first one, for that matter, I want to really is that, so as a layman, I consider myself as a totally a layman, and I would like to ask a question that you talked about a long-term research, and the long-term really, when it really happens in that terms. So for you, what may be the long-term in the kind of a projects that you do? We talked about 5-10 years in many cases, but for you, what can be the long-term to really a very a layman to understand something which can happen, which can, I mean, it can have a different kind of an impact. The longer the gestation or longer the, let's say, period for which you work on a research, it can be of the outcome can be far more reaching to the mankind. I would put it like this.
Yeah. So eventually get this, after a point in research, the long term is essentially the roadblocks in front of you. So the moment I know I cannot go further because I just don't know how to solve a problem. And there are many such problems now that I have in front that I clearly don't know an easy way around. And those involve particularly my PhD students, so okay, to tell them, that I think I appreciate incremental progress now as a scientist. I see incremental progress is the key, instead of going a long shot all the time. But there are a few things that I'm excited. One is a NASA mission which I work on, which is going to launch in 2034. And that is going to be essentially LIGO in space. So one of the reason I came here Vanderbilt because our group leader is the NASA program. She's the director for this mission. And we are very excited, mission. So I started working on this mission 2008 માં જ્યારે હું undergraduate કરતો હતો Pennsylvania State University માં. અને it takes actually, એક NASA ની mission is always be કે 3 generation work. So this is all again, I think democracy has slow working style. Scientists votes and scientists decides કે taxpayer ના money કેમાં વપરાવા જોઈએ. 2016 સુધી we had not discovered gravitational waves. It was clear that no scientist was going to fund a space mission for gravitational waves. And now we have made the discovery, so NASA can start thinking about it. So that is one I'm very excited. At least 2034 સુધી I have some idea. That's what I want to work on. And I've actually proposed experiments 2050 સુધી at least. So all these experiments and proposal is built on certain understanding of where technology is going to evolve. We don't have those technologies. Clearly, we cannot build a gravitational wave detector on the moon. But then if you think about Susu Joyce step and what other disciplines are going to evolve those technologies for you. And then based on that, one can think of what experiments one can do at that time. So that's some of the things I'm thinking, Atyan. And I have, because Atyan, I'm working on a few projects which are very theoretical. And hopefully you'll get to hear them. News Magarala.
I think there are Dwani and Suresh. If you, otherwise I'll keep on asking. So
no, we got a question which are asked in our auditorium. So Dwani will share those questions. They are asked by our makers listening to Dr. Karan Jani in auditorium.
Yes, so having such a lot of questions from the audience is testimony that you have shared something really worthwhile with us. Right? And trust me, it doesn't happen ordinarily. So a couple of interesting questions we have received. The first one is oriented towards students. One person was very hesitant in asking, he wrote it, rewrote it, deleted it. कि मुझे NASA जाना है, मैं NASA कैसे जाऊं? So the exact question that he then finally rephrased is, what should young students do to prepare for further study to get into astronomy? But I believe his root question was, how do I get to NASA? So that's the first one.
Yeah, so I hope તમે બધા માર્સનું હમણાં જે મિશનનો લોન્ચ જોયું હોય જેમાં નાસા પરસેવરન્સ મિશનનું રોવર લેન્ડિંગ હતું. It was very exciting. The person who was actually announcing okay, step by step when the probe was landing on Mars was an Indian origin female scientist. And seeing that is to me was quite a representation, right? Because there was like very known aspect of her which were Indian. I'll tell you, I'll tell you a few background. Sorry, unfortunately, the way we scientists, and at least I have been taught, is okay, we have to give a narrative which is personal to or anecdotal to make this answer possible. Because I can just tell you simple words, Marky. One has to study bachelor's in physics, or one has to go for aerospace engineering. Then you have to do masters, and then if you want to go to national lab and work like ISRO, so that is good enough. But you should also try to get a PhD in physics or aerospace engineering, and then you work for ISRO. If you come to United States, ki biji koi country, it's difficult to work for a space agency. A space agency does a lot of military research, and so usually they don't admit people who are not rightfully so, who don't have the citizenship criteria. Let's say, for example, you can't work in ISRO if you are from China or Bangladesh, right? I mean, it's a agency which can only hire Indians for the right reason. I mean, that is true also for NASA. But I don't see, one over the difference. Like ISRO does a lot of things that is civilizational science, what I call. What is civilizational science? Civilizational science is the way we change as a whole race how we think. It's not just taking a picture of a galaxy. When you see the Hubble Deep Field, જે લોકોએ બહુ પહેલા 90s માં photo લીધો, and you can see millions of galaxies એક photograph માં. That changes the way we think. And that is the kind of science I think now ISRO has started doing too. Chandrayaan mission, pachi Mangalyaan mission, and they just started also as AstroSat, which is a very important telescope. So I think that is there. The path is always there. It's okay. Field ma, I had this very natural question when I was an undergrad. कि कोई physics ma career kirte बनावे. And I can get answer from people, but unless and until you're not dived in, you don't really get the nuance. Like you have to have start, this whole process, and then you will come across people who have been in your journey X step agad, and you see them, and you plan your path. And that is the case with, I think doing this too. One, you have to at least start with BSc in physics or a bachelor's in engineering, whichever is your forte. Do you like robotics? Then do engineering. But do you like studying the stars? Then do a BSc physics. So that is my 2 cents.
Thank you. The next question is, how was the first black hole explored? And in general, how are black holes explored?
So by explored, you mean which was detected first?
I believe that should be a question from the audience, yes.
So we had early evidences of black holes starting 80s man and stuff. If you think there is the very basic idea is if a star is going around something and that something you cannot see, and you calculate what size it is, you can do from Newton's laws. Then you already know the size is so big that it has to be, then it should have been seen. If you can't see it and it's still so big, that means it's a black hole, right? I mean, so we had this preliminary ideas, and there are a few candidates, but essentially the very first confirmed evidence that black holes exist, exactly the way Einstein's general theory of relativity predicts them, that came in 2016 with LIGO discovery. Because when we see gravitational waves LIGO, and I was part of that very first team, and I was one of the very first humans also to see what that signal is. And when you see LIGO signal, it's like a wave, like a heartbeat wave. but that wave theoretically matches with what you call the event horizon of the black hole. That outside of that event horizon, what the space-time is, and when two black holes collide, what the event horizon then becomes. We capture all of that. And that is as clear an evidence as one can get of black holes. So I think I will put it actually at 2016 when we actually found first.
Okay, thank you. And I think the audience member who asked this would definitely have a wealth of knowledge from this. A couple of small, quick questions, and then moving on to some greater philosophical ones that have already joined us in the question. The small one is, how do you choose a research topic?
Only include the Padma Shri's question, huh?
Yes, definitely. It's in a sequence. I'm going in sequence.
So it's a lot of picking your research topic is essentially a test of your cuisine, right? I mean, I can take me to a 5-star restaurant, but if I don't like Italian food, knowing that this is probably one of the best Italian food I'm gonna get, it still doesn't click. I still need Punjabi, North Indian food. But it's an acquire. I mean, why do I know? Because you've tried it enough, and then what is something which is very root to you. And a more so is, generally we don't have research skills. We have to build them. It's just like the gym ma jaina, you train your muscles. It's something of that nature. But some of them, it comes very natural to you. So when I was in Stephen Hawking's institute, Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics, and there I was just wanting to study theoretical physics, string theory, all these theoretical ideas. And I was there, and I was surrounded by all the superstars in the field, and I simply could not get it. Like deep in me, I was like, I don't want to do this, because they were so far ahead from experiments. Okay, in the next 100, at least 50 years, those things are not going to be tested. It is completely mathematical gymnastics. And I thought to myself that I want to understand. I mean, if I wanted to just have a question, कि वो ब्रह्मांड की तो शुरुआत थी, तो इंडिया में गली गलियों में लोगों पास आंसर है. But the question was more so, how do I know कि ब्रह्मांड આવી રીતે જ શરૂઆત થયું? And that means I needed certain observational evidence. And that means I had to work close to an experiment. But it was a gradual learning. I started with, of course, wanting to do a very different thing. And eventually I realized, this is there. The second key thing, which I always tell PhD students, is you have to know where the field is going. You have to have a survey of the field. આટલા 5 વર્ષમાં શું થશે અને આવતા 10 વર્ષમાં શું થશે? That level of perspective you have. You cannot solve problems જે 50-60 વર્ષ સુધી solve ના થવાનો, right? And you cannot do complete, like I cannot just work on the basis કે આપણે moon પર જ જવાના છે. It's one of those ideas, but I mean, you have to work on where the technology is, where the field is. So that's how usually one picks the topics.
Getting to know this about how you yourself navigated finding your own areas, that's simply amazing. Now the next question is on the technical front. How do you measure the mass of black holes with gravitational waves?
That's a good question, right? So the mass of the black hole is very much, if you think about it, like pond ma, if you throw a stone, right? So the stone creates waves. And based on how big a stone you throw, the bigger the wave is going to be. But it also changes the frequency, right? કારણ કે બહુ મોટો stone તમે નાખો તો તરત splash થશે. બહુ નાનો stone નાખશો તમે તો પેલા ધીરે ધીરે ripples થાય. So that is something very much how black holes impact space-time. We are actually in an ocean of space-time, right? We live in a 4-dimensional universe, not 3-dimensional. 3D is what our brain can perceive for evolutionary reason, but universe has 4th dimension, which is time, and time is not constant. અત્યારના મારા કલાક થવા એ તમારા કલાક થયા હોય કારણ કે આપણે બંને અર્થ પર જ છે, but it's not 1 કલાક for those who are the astronauts orbiting from International Space Station. So time is a relative concept. So in that space-time motion, the waves that black hole creates. So black holes are essentially what you will call punctures in space-time, cube. And so when they move, they create, based on how big they are, they create a certain wave. And if just looking at amplitude and the frequency, we know. So when we saw this signal, May 2019 mark, the signal in frequency एवी होती कि from that frequency itself we knew that this is too big. And that is a very logical structure. It's just like saying if you have a theory, right, and a theory prediction क्यों हो सकता है? If the theory predicts, like Einstein's theory predicts black hole na mass scales inversely with the frequency of gravitational waves. So that's how we are able to find it.
Okay. That was insightful. What I really appreciate about that last question is how simply was such a technical concept explained. So moving on to another question, and then the philosophical one that I was waiting for. This one is, which publication is better for publishing technology research papers? Is it IEEE or any other?
Yeah, it's a very subjective field-to-field question. So every field has its star journals, and you publish pharmaceutical ni alag hoy, medicine ni alag hoy. The overall sort of combining badi journals, there are things like Nature and Science, which is a collection of all other fields na research, and it only publishes things that literally change the field, and on top of that, it has to be understood by a wide audience that it is changing the field. It doesn't usually publish nano incremental research. But that said, like engineering disciplines usually don't publish Nature, so they have IEEE. So on some, like mostly computer science, there is conference proceedings are more important than journal publications. So you go into present into a conference, and if you get selected to present in a conference, that is extremely prestigious. So it's a very field-to-field, question. That said, one should really know this if you want to proceed in a field by your undergraduate level. I think now it's a fair expectations top universities have. By the time you finish your undergraduate, you should have conference presentation. You should have journal publications.
Thank you for going above and beyond just the specific question. That's great. So basically, the way to reach out to people has changed. That is also what you communicated. This question is slightly tricky to put it accurately. It is simply this: what problems of life can be solved by listening to the universe?
Yeah. So there is a quote unquote what are the problems of life? There are some of them are existential questions. Like things about, let's say, you see gold and a uranium around us, right? Gold dictates pretty much apni badi technology. Semiconductors, cylinder, everything is based out of gold plating. Uranium pretty much dictates the geopolitics. The reason we go on war, either a country goes on war, Iran sathe, tensions that affects how India-Iran relations are, because India has to maintain US sathe relations. All this is very connected geopolitics. It doesn't impact your life day to day, but it does impact in a grand way. If you live 50 years, you are impacted by geopolitics. Now, where did gold and uranium come from? Right? So our sun cannot make gold. Our sun cannot make uranium. In fact, so the reason, if you think about how a periodic table, when you see a lot of elements in that periodic table, our sun cannot make. By make, even its core cannot make. A lot of them came because stars died. And when stars die, it goes through what we call supernova and creates heavier elements. But even then, the biggest star that would die would still not create gold and a uranium. And in 2017, actually, I was interesting. I was on the way India. I was coming there. I was gonna shoot my TED talk in Yashraj Studios with Shah Rukh Khan there. And I was on the way, and I reached Doha airport, and I got this text messages that I get if LIGO sees something. It's an automated system we have. If LIGO sees something, the researcher gets the text. And of course, there is like, it has to be very interesting कि हमारा phone સુધી phone call आवे. And then I was on Doha airport. I was opened my laptop and I started listening to, we were discussing what this signal had come. And what we saw that the signal that LIGO seen, within a minute, NASA ने का satellite है Fermi satellite looks for gamma rays in the universe. That also saw. And they both saw from the same location in sky. Now that was the breakthrough many of us were waiting for decades. कि एक ज जगह थी gravitational waves पण આવે અને એક જ જગ્યાથી light પણ આવે. It's a very particular, it does not happen with black holes because black holes don't emit light. But it does when it's a neutron star. A neutron star is a state just before a black hole. And those two neutron stars, when they were coming close, we were listening to the universe, as your question is, for gravitational waves. Those waves came, but as soon as the neutron star touched, it started creating gamma rays, and it had this flare. During that process, it's called kilonova actually, J process thai. When the two neutron stars are colliding and scratching each other, that is when the universe produces gold and uranium. That's the only way the universe produces gold and uranium. So the fact that Earth par apni paase gold and uranium came because something like this had happened apni galaxy ma, and those material eventually was flushed into when our sun was being born. If you think about intelligent life can exist only near parts of the universe where such neutron star collisions have happened. Because only then, an intelligent species would get at least certain element to make technology. And eventually, of course, we'll need nuclear reactors to make up the fuel to go to space and stuff. And that's why also these are rare earth element. You don't find them that common to find because these processes in the universe are not that common. So, અત્યારના તમે કોઈ પણ goldની વીટી પહેરી હોય, you are carrying an imprint of something magnificent that has happened in the universe, right? So in that many ways, listening to the universe does change our life in a much grander way than what we tend to perceive. This is how I would look at it. This is not how we would tell to the politicians who fund our science. So then if you ask what is a practical application of why do you have to do કેમ India 1200 crore વાપરે gravitational wave LIGO બનાવવા માટે when we have other priorities as well. 1200 crores is a lot of money. And you think about okay, everyone who works on these things, my students or myself, we use the level of sophistication in technology that is pretty much cutting edge. A lot of our students, my students, they don't continue working in physics, but they get hired by Google, they get hired by top companies because they have PhDs in physics. They understand how a supercomputer works, how you write an algorithm in supercomputer, how you can do data analysis, to do a millisecond no signal and emathi to figure out how it came from the universe, what the mass of the black holes is. A very sophisticated of algorithms and data analysis that goes into it, which has many applications. You can find actually how the earth has oil reserves, how these skills. So those skills are transferable. And that is why as a nation, we invest, in such large things because it allows our industries to hire expertise that would have not naturally existed in the country. Right? So yeah, those are the broad things.
The cliche mind blown is no longer a cliche. This is literally mind blown. Diamonds are not forever. From what you say, gold is forever. The sentence or the note with which you ended your answer actually ties into the last question we have received, sort of, according to me. And it comes with an appreciation from the person who has asked the question. So the appreciation is, thank you for upgrading us with these insights. And the question that accompanies it is sort of existential, technical, and philosophical. What is the purpose of doing such studies?
Yeah, so I do tend, when I feel, to me, it's a very personal thing from people to people. For me, science is a very adhyatmic process. It's a very spiritual exercise to me. And the reason I say this is, I also have read Upanishads. I also have written my own version of Gita when I was fairly young. But there's this underlying this, how do one say it? This thirst to get a sense of everything. Why does the universe exist? Why do I exist? What kind of things I can do when I'm only on this planet for 70, 80 years. Those are the things that, of course, one has to keep pondering time and again. And then there comes a second side to these questions. Then now I understand how big the universe is. I know how galaxies form, how rare, how simple a star is, how unlikely it is to have a star. How it's so useless, our existence, in many ways, right? We are existing as a small species, a temporal species in a galaxy na khona, small suburb ma, apni potani galaxy na. In fact, the way we make apna sun ni pradakshina, we do the orbit and we take a year. The sun orbits the center of the galaxy, and it takes about I think about 250 crore ke 25 crore varsh to finish one such full orbit around the center of the galaxy. Since life started on Earth about 4.5 billion years ago, the sun has made only about 25 orbits since then. I think not even 25, it's like 12 or 15, and one can correct exact numbers. The largest species that has lived on Earth for the longest time is dinosaurs, the Jurassic Age. They lived to almost a quarter of an orbit. The highest longevity a species has had. એના પછી તો ઘણા બધા પ્લાન્ટ્સ ને બધું જન્મ્યું, રાઈટ? ઘણા બધા આજે અત્યારના આપણે ફ્રૂટ્સ ખાઈએ છીએ તે. અને પછીથી ઓફકોર્સ હ્યુમન્સ આયા અને વી હેવ અ વેરી tiny existence. And then you ponder, કે હવે હું બપોરે હવે આજે ના કામ કરું તો બ્રહ્માંડ તો બદલાઈ જવાનું નથી. And even if I stop doing what I do right now, it's not going to essentially change anything. But the reason I know all this, the reason we communicate aaj aa badi vastuma, is because many generations of scientists, everyone contributed their maximum. Collective knowledge over the years of generations is where I can tell you that the gold and the uranium comes from neutron star collisions. Right? It's a generational effect. So if I don't work, then there are other questions that I am taking for granted, which the next generation would not be able to answer. So I work only because the next generation can answer the questions that I couldn't. And that is, I think, a reason that a lot of scientists continue to persist doing astrophysics. So yeah, this is sort of a grand question.
And I'm sure your legacy will continue in the generations to come. Thank you so much. We have one special personal question waiting for you. Aman, go ahead.
It's just this is out of the context. Music of the universe or music from that sitar which is placed behind you? Which one is your favorite?
So I'm very okay at sitar majusudi, but I listen to Indian classical music pretty much since I wake up to I sleep. It's almost always playing in my background. મારા સવારના મોર્નિંગ રાગના પણ પ્લેલિસ્ટ છે, આફ્ટરનૂન રાગના પણ છે, ઇવનિંગના પણ છે, અને નાઇટ રાગના પણ છે. And I think, I'm fairly convinced on that idea કે હિન્દુસ્તાની ક્લાસિકલ જે આપણા રાગના કોન્સેપ્ટ્સ છે, that is as abstract and evolved as quantum physics. It's હું એકવાર I was at the ambassador અહીંયા હતા. They had a dinner for Rajan Mishra and Sajan Mishra, Pandit Rajan Mishra, Sajan Mishra. Both of them are Padma Vibhushan, Indian classical musicians. And they belong from a Gharana, my father, and they are like, that sort of generational musicians. So I asked him, once, what makes a morning raga morning? What makes Ahir Bhairav only work in morning and Yaman only work in evening? And it's not just the mood. There is because Ahir Bhairav has a certain sadness to it. And he said, okay, you pick the sound at the frequency. Sawar thai hoy, your ears have not fully opened. So you play on a certain scale, and that it allows the swar to enter you. The sawarna je environment hoy ma. Now that is a very detailed physics. And the fact that we had, as our civilization had thought about, ragas at least are a good 1,000-1,500 years old. Collected evidence of them are at least 1,500 years old. Otherwise, it goes all the way to, references goes to Ved. So I'm very deeply amazed. I unfortunately don't understand so much, but I'm just absolutely amazed. So for me, it is, I think I can listen to the music of the universe because I also listen to this music.
Thank you, Dr. Jani. We are just in awe of the knowledge and insights that you have provided. It's just commendable.
Thank you.
Patel sir.
Yeah.
I think, sir, we should invite Dr. Jani for a entire full day workshop, and we can just continue to listen. The 1.5 hour is just flew like this.
Aman, that's my feeling. Exactly. That to a scientist, Karan, bear with me, I would say, and that too who is working in a field, I mean, how many people would really like to listen? Or because they will not understand whatever the reason. But here is the situation where we say that you can keep on talking. Like Aman would like to listen to the music. I do not, let's say, listen to the music as much as, or enjoy. But today, to a scientist for that matter, I may not be because I'm a commercial person, let's say. But listening to it is so, I would say, melodious in a way. The way beautifully, let's say, you explain every concept. And I'm happy that you gave us the time. Let me put it like this. So it's not the Yuvala, but the youth and whomsoever may have, let us say, attended, let's say, on the YouTube, we will see. But your recorded lectures is something which would certainly inspire a lot of people, I would say, the youth in particular. The way you look at life, it's amazing. And at this age, the way you have, let's say, the idea of everything in that sense. Even if you look at the talk that you gave, you covered many things in a way. So you did not talk purely about the science, but you really gave a good guidance going forward. How the technologies really came, what were the triggers, and what is the current trigger, what is likely to happen, and finally to end with a that your understanding and the use of, I would put it, sorry, I'm using a crude word like use of music for that matter. Dr. Pankaj Joshi is joined, and I just thought that we should recognize his presence, and if he has anything to really share before, because Dr. Joshi, I tend to say, Karan, I'm so sorry. We feel so close. The way you talk to us, that I remember the last year when we met at our home, the kind of time you gave and the kind of warmth with which you talk. Um, uh, Dr. Joshi, if you want to share anything, then because he has been talking to us for close to 2 hours now, maybe getting closer to. Yeah, 1.5 hours, sorry, 6:30, 7:30.
Yes.
So very 1.5 hours, yeah.
Yes, that is a wonderful. Firstly, of course, my apologies for missing a part of your lecture. I was tied up with today. President came, and even after that, president of our university, and even after that, we had the various things. But I am not surprised at the pleasure that H.T. Patelji have expressed at your talk, Karan, because we have been together earlier, and the way in which you put things. I mean, science, of course, is science, but the expressions are different all the time. They change from scientist to scientist. So you can present the science in a very, what shall I say, I mean, matter of fact or drab manner. But then you can also put it up in such a way that the key excitement of the science comes out. And that is exactly what is needed for the society, for the young people, and no doubt efforts like beautiful efforts like Yuvalai. I was there in the inauguration in the morning. Again, there were wonderful thoughts exchanged. So it is this inspiration to creativity. And we can, of course, make gadgets, we can make, models and all that. But to go into the depth of science, that a few, youth will do eventually, because they will be very excited to go and explore the fundamental laws of nature. And ultimately, those are going to be applied. Those are going to, make the good for the society. Like now, everyone is asking, what is virus, how it is working, and what scientists are doing. You see, so okay, we have a lot of trouble with corona and this pandemic and all that. But on the other hand, the other side of it is even a very common, person out there in the street, or even a worker at the construction site. वो vaccine कब आएगा? Scientists लोग क्या कर रहे हैं? So this is the level of interest. So we must thank you for this effort that you have made, Karan. Nice to meet you here.
Thank you, and
thank you, H.T. Yeah.
It means a lot coming from you, and I just want to say, it's like it's so heartening to see, and we had, of course, with Professor Joshi, we've had also nice discussions on news and Doordarshan on the sciences and why one should continue doing research in astrophysics. So I'm of course always quite a fanboy when Professor Joshi is there. So thank you.
Yeah. Finally, I would say that
just one remark, if I may make, H.T. Patelji. I see, Sitar or Tanpura behind Karan, and I like to make a comment that in our, traditions, in fact, music has been classified not just arts as it is commonly understood. It is classified as both arts and science. There is a big science in music. Now, you see, unless we communicate science in a detailed manner, this, wonderful facts won't come out. Sorry, now, I just made this comment. Patelji, H.T. Patelji was saying something. Yeah, and please.
I just thought that, Karan, with so much that you have achieved at this age, we wish you We wish you really lot more success in the field that you have chosen. For us, the way we define is, let's say Nobel Prize is something which is an ultimate. But at this age, if what you have achieved, maybe multiple of Nobel Prize is what we would pray for it. And you are not a pride for Baroda, you are a pride for the nation, and you are so humble. So we pray for your contribution in the field of science and in the field for the humanity.
Yeah, I just want to, thank you. And I just want to say out of humility. So it's, this, I feel, like apde, this, and I want to say it for the students more than anyone, that we have this unfortunate thing in science to think of lone geniuses, but what of modern science we do is highly collaborative. It needs the same people skill that, you cannot have a single Einstein or a single Feynman anymore. We do as a group research. And that's why also this criteria of Nobel Prize and etc. sort of starts getting vague now to us, is because it's more important that, I work with 100 scientists out there, and that's why we produce this result. And I just want to make this expectations to students clear. Don't go into this path thinking that you are going to be the sole torchbearer of modern physics. That is absolutely not going to happen. Think as being part of, sort of a joint cult to say, Jima, you're going to part and, learn something new. So, but sorry to interrupt, but that's all I wanted to say to students on this.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Once again, this is a humble part of your, being humble is a part of your personality, and that's what came out. And yeah, we agree that it is a teamwork, but somebody who guides, somebody who is able to see way out, certainly is somebody who's doing something much better in terms of being the part of the team. Thank you very much for giving such a good time to us. And as Aman said, as I said, it's like we feel like, so hopefully at some point of time in future, we would be able to, we will request you, and we'll like to hear you. We would like the bigger audience to listen to you and get inspired. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for having me. Bye-bye.